Hello and welcome to Underlords Universe, where we in the Underlords Universe like to discuss all of the stuff that inspires us to be creative in our own right. But that's not what you stumbled across our channel or this episode for. So more on that at the end. If you stick with us, that'd be great. We'd appreciate it. But this is an episode, as I think this is part 6. Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, we have been dividing this with my brother and co-creator, co-colleague in the Underlords universe. And we've been doing a series on the Kiss records. We both grew up as big Kiss fans, and we divided the Kiss catalog into eras and chunks. And we are doing a discussion slash ranking of in this episode, of the last 3 Kiss studio albums, which would be Circus and Sonic Boom and Monster. And we use a ranking system where we give each song in the album up to 5 points, and then we divide by the total to get an average star rating and an average percentage. We do that to try to keep ourselves as honest as possible, and sometimes that opens up some surprises in the ranking systems, or in the outcomes rather. And before we went on air here, Brent, you had just said something about these 3 albums and being somewhat of a surprise. And I don't want to give anything away yet, but what are you initial thoughts in terms of how these ended up ranking for you?
Um, well, of course, we're going to do a summary episode where we kind of revisit all the albums at some point. We'll do that and see where they
Yep.
fall in the discography. But when the albums came out, when Psycho Circus first came out, I think we were all super excited. The reunion of the original band. Did the album live up to the hype? Well, we're going to discuss that. These albums, in ranking them, the final results for me didn't really surprise me, other than maybe like one finishing higher than another sort of thing. So if you would have asked me where do they fall, where do you rank them 1, 2, 3 before we did this exercise, this probably would not have been the result that I would have given you necessarily, which is one of the fun things about doing what we do,
Yeah.
because like Brian, you've said a lot of times, there's an objectivity and a subjectivity to this. It's easy to say, oh, well, Lick It Up's my favorite Kiss record. Well, is it? You
Yeah.
can still, it maybe, but if you grade Music from the Elder higher than Lick It Up, does that mean Music from the Elder is your favorite Kiss record instead? I don't know. That's kind of what this is about. That's what makes this kind of fun.
Yeah, and it's not that the system is completely perfect or anything like that, but we just kind of noticed that when other folks are rating and discussing and ranking albums and stuff, sometimes I wonder, like, well, what's the criteria that they use to do that? And again, ours isn't perfect. We're not saying that other systems are somehow bad, or that people that don't have a set system are somehow wrong or anything. That's not the case at all. It's just we wanted to devise something that might open up some surprises for ourselves. And like Brent, you just said, when we're done with this, at some point we are going to do an aggregate episode where we put all of the Kiss albums into an overall ranking for both of us, and that'll be kind of interesting to see where it all shakes out. But for right now, for this episode, we are just focused on, well, I guess we could call the latter day makeup era. We could call it the return to form era, where they stop kind of experimenting with styles. I don't really know what you want to call it, but it covers Psycho Circus, Sonic Boom, and Monster, even though those albums obviously released over a wide range. Gosh, 98. What is Sonic Boom? Sonic Boom
The,
or Psycho Circus is 98. What year is Sonic Boom? Sonic Boom is 2000, and then Monster is 12,
well,
right? 2012. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna discuss the album highs and low points, maybe some interesting nuances about them, and then at the end we'll do a little bit of a ranking. If you're still with us, we'll plug the stuff that we make ourselves, and if you're inclined to, please like, subscribe, offer us your own comments about what your thoughts are on these albums. We'd like to hear from you. And away we go. Why don't you start us off? Psycho Circus. You want to start with high points, low points? quirky
Um,
bits of
let's
info? What do you want to do?
I'll do a little just a general background, and then I'll jump into some high points, and I'll kind of get into. And if you want to get into your high points, we can do that.
All right.
There's some to talk about too, but like I said in the intro, we were stoked when we knew this album was going to come out. I think the very first thing I ever heard, Brian, you and I were at a friend's house, and we heard, I think on the computer, a snippet of Into the Void. Or that's my recollection anyway. And I remember thinking, man, this is going to be a really, this is going to be a
I
really
don't remember that. Whose house was that?
Jeff's.
Oh, no kidding. I don't remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, I take your word for it. I have no reason to
So
doubt
like
that.
some
Yeah.
snippets have been leaked out, and hearing that, I thought, man, this is going to be, because the original band hadn't really recorded anything together since Love Gun, honestly. So 20 years later, they're putting out this record, and we were all really stoked about it. And it comes out, not to say that it really disappointed. And of course, the tour was really good. I would say the record is solid, but not spectacular. It's a Bruce Fairbairn production. I think it's a hefty production. Sounds really good. You could say it's a little bit muddy and a little thick, maybe in the low end, but I think overall, sonically, it's a solid sounding record. The high points for me are going to be the title track. I think that's a 5 point song.
Oh, really?
Um,
Okay.
I do. Really good vocal from Paul. Um, Paul also does, my understanding is Paul does the lead guitar on it as well, although Ace played the lead obviously live. I think it's a really, really good song, good set opener.
I
Another song
actually, what real quick though, I think my notes actually indicate that Tommy Thayer played the lead on that.
that wouldn't surprise me
So
either.
yeah,
Correct.
I'm not sure whether my source is correct or whether your source is correct, but either way, it's not Ace playing the lead on Psycho Circus.
Sounds like Ace, but it's not Ace.
Right.
Uh, this was kind of a surprise to me, but my second favorite track on the album, or co-number one track, is going to be Raise Your Glasses. It's
Really?
poppy. Yes, it's
It's very
poppy.
poppy, yeah.
It's a great Paul vocal. I love it. It's catchy. I'm shocked it wasn't a single. At least, I
Yeah.
think it's a great. I love that song. And then this album also has, for me, some 4 star songs within. I really really like 4 stars for that. Into the Void, 4 stars. And here's another bit of a surprise, Brian.
Hmm.
One, I gave that 4.5 stars. I love Gene's vocal. I love how subdued it is. Gene did all the vocals on the song, all the backing vocals.
Hmm.
Actually, it's almost harkens back to Gene's solo album from 1978 in some ways. I think it's a great tune. Really, really like it. So I think right there, half the record, in my judgment, is really, really good. The other half, we'll get to it. But those would be my high points on a record that, again, we found out, not long after the record came out, that Ace and Peter didn't really play much on it.
Yeah.
I was kind of let down. Probably for you, I know it was for me. Not a
Hmm.
shock necessarily, but a letdown. And then of course, I just want to mention real quick, and you probably have the same version, Brian. But we have the version of the album that's got an extra bonus
Yeah.
disc, which
Yeah.
has,
Mine still
which
has
is
the stickers on the front. I don't remember what country this was released in specifically, but yeah, it has.
yeah, really, it's some really good bonus tracks there with that. So yeah, and we'll get to the stars and the rankings and whatnot. That's kind of my first impression of the record, favorite songs on the record, and so forth. And so
Mhm.
but I'll kind of turn it over to you and see what you think.
Yeah, okay. So, I don't necessarily disagree with your song selections there. I have a couple differences though. I think um mine is more of just the level to which I like these songs. Like you said you gave Psycho Circus 5, right? And you
Mhm.
gave you said We Are One. You gave that a 4.5. Is that
Yep,
right?
I gave Raise Your Glasses a 5. Yep.
And you raise your. That's funny because when this album was actually new, "Raise Your Glasses" was one of my favorite songs on the record, and I agree with you. It's poppy. I think it's a great Paul vocal, um, but it for some reason it just hasn't aged as well for me. I still like the song, but I just kind of gave it a 3. Maybe if I was in a different mood, I might give it a 3.5. But I didn't rate it as high as I would have if, you know, as I would have back in '98. Um, I gave Psycho Circus and Within both 3.5. I think they're good, solid rock songs. I think that I don't know, the thing about something like with Within, the segue from Psycho Circus to Within with that kind of backwards guitar thing, which is actually Bruce Kulick. Um, it to me, right off the bat, it gives the sense that the album is disjointed and it is a bit of a hodgepodge. And I think that that's what the whole album just feels like to me, is
I
just this
agree.
weird hodgepodge. And of
A
course, you
question,
didn't say what?
question for
Yeah,
question for you.
yeah.
So, and maybe this is part of it. Within would have fit really well in Carnival of Souls, don't you think? In
It would have
terms
been,
of the style of the song.
yeah, and it would have been interesting because it would have had a much drier production, and so it's like, well, what would have, would it come out like? It would have been, maybe different, but yeah, that's an interesting point. And to that point, actually, you mentioned that like on Into the Void, that's the only song that Paul, Gene, Peter, and Ace actually play on together on this. The rest of it, all the drums other than that is Kevin Valentine, who did a couple of songs actually on Hot in the Shade.
Right.
And but I don't think that this is not like, I don't think it's a bad album. I do like it. I think there's a bit of cheese in addition to the disjointedness. I think like I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll is a little cheesy. I just give that a 2.5. I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting into the downsides, but I'll kind of stick with the upsides. I think I like Dreamin', although it's clearly a ripoff of I'm 18, but I gave that a 3.5. I think what's interesting to me is in terms of the album as a whole is in some way the fact that it is a hodgepodge, not only in terms of the songs, but in terms of like the playing on it. For example, Bruce Kulick plays actually a few leads. He plays bass on a couple of tracks. I finally found my way. He plays bass on. He plays bass on We Are One. That's no, excuse me. I'm sorry. That's Tommy Thayer plays bass on We Are One. So there's some interesting combinations. Like on Psycho Circus, it's Paul, Kevin Valentine, Bruce, and Tommy. It's like, okay, that's interesting. On Within, it's
Yes.
Gene, Paul, Kevin Valentine, and Bruce.
So
So
Bruce is on the
so
Dynasty.
within is actually like the Revenge lineup but with a different drummer, so I think that's actually kind of the interesting thing about listening to the record is when I think about those elements. But in terms of the actual album as a whole, not and if I'm not thinking about those things, it's to me it's just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. It's good. I don't dislike a whole lot of it, but I don't love a whole lot of it. I would say that my actual favorite song on the record is probably Journey of a Thousand Years. And
Okay.
I agree with
Yeah.
you when you said We Are One kind of harkens back a little bit to Gene's solo album, his 78 solo album. That's what I feel like about Journey of a Thousand Years. That to me sounds like if Gene was doing a solo album where he actually kind of cared about it instead of, that
Hmm.
abomination that he put out. What year did Asshole come out? Like
99 to, was it
yeah,
2001,
something
someone
like that. And it's like, man, I need to go back and listen to that and see if I can endure it because, you
good
know,
luck.
right. But to the point though, all of the Gene songs on this album are credited just to Gene. The other,
Hmm.
Paul's got co-writing credits and stuff, but the Gene songs are just Gene songs, and it's like, hmm, if Journey of a Thousand Years was that, I think that's a really interesting song. I love the way it develops. I love it. It's like just this slow building crescendo, the whole thing, and I
Hmm.
think it's fantastic. I love Journey of a Thousand Years. To me, that's the
Really good,
so
really good vocal from Gene on that song too. Another really good vocal.
yes,
He
and
showcases he showcases the different styles of vocals that he does all on this record, like
mhm.
from Within to We Are One to Journey of a Thousand Years. He has a really broad vocal palette. I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
I agree. And really, just across the entire Kiss catalog, his vocal approach is very, very diverse. But, and this is kind of a good segue into maybe I don't want to say low points because I actually like Into the Void quite a lot, but it'll help segue us there. Um, I gave Into the Void 3.5 stars. I think it's a really, really solid song. Um, I can't help though, when I listen to Into the Void, think, well, what would this have been before Gene said, "Hey Ace, you really need to write a song that's kind of spacey, character. It's got to be about your character." And it's like, dude, is We Are One about like being a demon or something? Is Journey of a Thousand Years really in a character for you? But somehow he didn't have to do that, but Ace did. It was like, let's pigeonhole Ace. Um, and that just kind of bugs me a little bit. I still think Into the Void is a really, really good song. I think it's one of the better songs on the record. I love listening to it because it's like the only thing that the original Kiss recorded, like from Love Gun all the way up to that point. Um, but I think it just speaks to the kind of, again, disjointed nature of the whole thing. So, uh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm kind of filibustering here.
No, I think your comment about the album being disjointed is really spot on. I mean, that's one of the things that when you look at the totality of the record, it kind of takes a little bit away from. It's just that it's almost like the pieces don't fit together, but we're
Mhm.
going to make them fit together. And it's not that you can't have different styles of music on the same record. You can, and a lot of
Right.
stuff that we like, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But in this case, the pieces just still don't fit.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't, to me, this album does not feel like a, a journey, a nice car ride that has, ups and downs and hills and valleys and takes you in different directions. To me, it feels like it zigs and zags, uh, almost erratically from one track to the next. And then you get this sappy, obligatory, and here's my real segue actually into the negatives on this. I finally
Or
found my way. I mean,
right.
it's so contrived. Now, I think there's some contrivances here. I do think Raise Your Glasses I think it's a good song, but it's like, hooray, we're on top of the world now. And you kind of get that with I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll. It's almost like we had this massive reunion tour, and now we're gonna like this whole album has to be like this big reflection of of celebrating how we're on top of the world again. And it's like, okay. I mean, I imagine some of that's a little bit maybe genuine, but when you stick in songs like I Finally Found My Way, it's like, well, Peter's got to have a ballad because I mean he sang Beth, so gotta have a ballad.
Yeah.
No, never mind songs like Black Diamond, Getaway, Hooligan. It's like, dude, give the guy, a song with some guts to it.
Yeah.
But oh no, no. And that song blows. It's
Oh,
it's
it's dreadful.
it's dreadful. Yeah. Um so I think the lowest point is I finally found my way. I don't think You Wanted the Best is a good song at all, but I think it's mildly funny in maybe
Comedic,
an accidental comedy sort of way.
comedic, and that's the only reason I gave it any points.
What did you give You Wanted the Best?
I give you one of the best 1.5 stars
Okay.
points
I gave it two.
purely for comedic purposes. The
Yeah.
aforementioned I Finally Found My Way, I gave a 0. And I'll go so far as to say that that is probably the worst Kiss song ever recorded.
Well, it's funny. I,
I mean,
I gave I gave You One of the Best a two, and I finally found my way 1.5, but merely for like comedic value. Because like if I when I do listen to it, I just to kind of laugh and be like,
it is
"Ugh."
it is sad. I mean, it makes me cringe when I hear that the part of the song where it's like I think it's Paul and Peter try to sing together,
Yeah,
away part or whatever.
yeah,
It's so cringeworthy. That doesn't even sound good. And like
yeah.
you said, it's so contrived. Did Diane Warren co-write that song?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah,
You
it's
know
just
what? Let's take a quick look because it so sounds like a Diane Warren type of thing.
it's so
Um,
good. And then the song that they did on the Detroit Rock City
no,
soundtrack.
no, no, it is not. Diane Warren I think she wrote the song that's on the Detroit Rock City soundtrack. Honestly, this is just Paul and Bob Ezrin. And it's
Okay,
like,
well,
hey guys, you've done better.
shame on them. And the song on the Detroit City soundtrack is just as bad. Don't get me wrong. This is the worst, in my judgment, just me.
Yeah.
The worst song to ever appear on a Kiss record is "I Finally Found It." You might be able to convince me otherwise. It's going to be hard, but this song is horrendous.
Yeah, it's
It's
pretty
awful.
bad.
I can't, Brian. I can't even laugh about it. Okay,
Yeah.
I just listen to it and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
okay, so when they were doing production for this song, like Bruce Fairbairn listened to this and thought, yeah, man, this captured just what this record's supposed to be about. Yeah, we got it, boys, we got it. No,
Mm,
no,
no, no. So I got a different question for you.
yeah.
Best riff on the record. Because like
Uh,
my favorite song is Journey of a Thousand Years, but that's not really a riff oriented song.
no, I think the best riff on the record is "Into the Void."
Same here. I would agree with that. I think, and it's like, and that actually speaks to like, okay, what else did Ace have up his sleeve here? Now, and we should look at Ace's catalog separately. His post Kiss solo catalog, um, and but I mean, they're it's not like it doesn't have hits and misses. He's got some duds for sure, but at the same time, there's some moments on his post Kiss solo material, even his recent post Kiss material, that's actually really pretty darn good. And it's like, is this really the only thing he could have contributed to this record? I don't know. I mean, it's almost like, well, we have to have at least one Ace song and one Peter song just to show that we're, a band, even though we're certainly not functioning as a band. And
Well,
that's where that's again that gets to the whole disjointed thing. And yeah,
no, I agree, and not to belabor the point, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that Paul and Gene have said that Ace and Peter submitted more material, it just wasn't up to snuff. And
well, that's usually what it is.
I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, it's got to be better than like "I Pledge Allegiance." For me, it's a 3-star song. Now we should also maybe just to qualify this,
Hmm.
when we say it's a 3-star song, we don't dislike the song. For me, a 3-star song is a good song.
Yeah,
I can take it. Okay. When you get into the 2.5, and 1, then you're starting to say, yeah, there's some things about it I really don't like.
yeah.
I gotta believe Ace probably had some stuff that was as good as "I Pledge Allegiance" on this record that he had presented in Gene and Paul or Bruce Fairbairn.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if like you just take a song like Space Invader, for example. I think that's fantastic. I think Space Invader is good or better than almost anything on this record.
Better than anything on this record.
So, I mean, that's maybe I'm overstating that a little bit. I mean, there are some really good songs on this record. It's just very disjointed. So, at any rate, you want to move along?
I do, unless you, yeah. Let's move along. Let's not reveal any numbers till we get to do after we get to
Yeah.
the third. Let's
Sure,
do that.
sure, sure. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, then of course the next album, which comes, whatever X number of years later, Sonic Boom, which
The
of course,
Walmart.
yes, it was released through Walmart, but the cover art was done by, oh gosh, what's his name? He did the same art that did Rock and Roll Over.
That's correct.
And
Is
Dennis
it Michael? No, is it Michael Dolan?
Oh, that's it. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. So sonically, I think while I think Psycho Circus has a bit of a harshness to it.
Mhm.
I think that Sonic Boom nails the Sonics. Not to be punny about it. I think it's one of the best sounding Kiss records ever made.
I, I
Just
I
I think
agree.
the guitars, the placement, the mix, everything sounds warm and mid-rangey and great. And when I first heard Modern Day Delilah, I thought, that's Kiss. This
Yep.
is Kiss. And to that point, I don't know if you're aware of this, but here, I'm going to give you a trivia question. Are you ready?
We'll see. We'll see.
There are Now there's a caveat on this, okay, but so I'm gonna word it this way. There are only 3 albums in the entire Kiss catalog that do not have songs written by outside songwriters or co-writes written by outside songwriters. In other words, there are 3 Kiss records where only the guys in Kiss wrote the songs. Do you know what those three albums are off the top of your head?
Well, this is one of them.
This is one of them. Yep.
They would be the debut.
That's the one that has a caveat. It depends on which pressing. So if you said the
I'm,
first pressing, yes. If it's because of
yeah, I'm,
Kissing Time, because they added the addition of Kissing Time, yeah.
I'm excluding Kissing Time. And then I'm gonna say, no, it's not Rock and Roll Over because there are co-writers on Rock and Roll. There are co-writers on Dynasty. There's co-writers on Love Gun. There's co-writers on Unmasked. There's co-writers on Elder.
Yep.
There's co-writers on Creatures. There's co-writers on Lick It Up. There's co-writers on Animalize. Co-writers
No,
on.
wait a minute. Oh, you went past one. Look it up.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking, hey, Vinny. Well, Vinny was a member, so
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. So yeah. And the early stuff you have like Steve Cornell writing like She and you get
John Delaney.
yeah.
John Delaney.
And who was why can't I think of oh my gosh, Stan Penridge co-wrote like Hooligan and Baby Driver and stuff. So yeah, it's actually if you consider the first pressing of the Kiss record, the debut, then it's 4. Is you get that, then Lick It Up, then Sonic Boom and Monster. So in that sense, if you're defining a Kiss record by the 4 guys that play the 4 instruments having written the material, and if you define a Kiss record as the 4 guys and their respective instruments playing on it, well, it certainly isn't Psycho Circus.
No.
Sonic Boom is a Kiss record in that sense. And on top of that, Paul produced it. So it's not, it's not even an outside producer. So it's really a Kiss record. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not without its faults.
Right.
So I mentioned Modern Day Delilah. I think that's one of the best songs on the record. I think Yes, I Know Nobody's Perfect. Very Rock and Roll Over feel to that. That's one of my favorites. Hot and Cold. If I'm pushed, I might say Hot and Cold is my favorite song on the record.
Right.
It's just got, a bit of just a real swagger to it. I'm also going to say this. I really, really love when lightning strikes.
Oh, it's really good, man.
And people say like, oh, he's just being an Ace clone and blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, fine. I still like the song. Sorry.
Right.
And frankly, Say Yeah grew on me. Because even though it's kind of corny, Say Yeah, 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 it is kind of interesting. It's in a minor key. It's like it's this upbeat kind of song, but it's in a minor key, and I think that's kind of interesting. Not that they're a prog rock band or anything, but it's kind of interesting in that sense. So yeah, those are my highlights. What are your highlights?
Well, first of all, it's interesting you mentioned the word warm to describe the sound of the record. I have the same word in my notes.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that Yes, I Know Nobody's Perfect kind of harkens back to 75, 76 era Kiss.
Yeah.
I agree. It reminded me initially of Dress to Kill or Rock and Roll Over.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of vibe. The record has a 70s vibe to it. When I listen to it, it just kind of takes me, songs like Hot and Cold kind of take me back to the mid 70s. That's kind of this, like you said, that song's got a bit of a swagger to it. It's just kind of Gene kind of returning to some of the songwriting that he did in that period of the band.
And his bass playing.
Yes.
The bass playing on this album has a lot of those like walks, like the old school bass runs and walks, and it's like that's the Gene of old right there.
Yeah, very good point. And to your point too, we agree on the high points on this record. Modern Day Delilah, I gave that 5. It's Perfect, I gave that a 5. Those are my 2 favorite songs on the record. If I had to pick one, I would probably say Nobody's Perfect is my favorite song on the album. I also really like Hot and Cold. I give
Mhm.
that a, and When Lightning Strikes, I give that a 4.
Okay.
Those, me, those are the 4 standout tracks on the record, and you mentioned all of them. So we agree on that. It does have some low points or some points that are kind of, in the middle, but I never really thought about, you said this is really a Kiss record, and I never actually thought about it that way, but you're
Hmm.
right. My favorite Kiss record of all time is Creatures of the Night, and you can argue that's really barely a Kiss record. To kind of counterpoint to this, it's
Yeah,
like,
depending on how you're defining the
right,
stuff, right? Yeah.
you make a really interesting point. This is really, in every sense of the word, a Kiss record, and I never really thought about that until just now when you mentioned it.
There is one thing, and this is a good segue maybe into the kind of the downsides of the record. There's one spot on the record where it just doesn't feel like a Kiss record. It feels so much like a Poison record. Just there's a
Uh,
moment where it's like, this isn't Kiss, this is Poison. And
and I know
that's not to my liking. Do you know which song I'm referring to?
you'd be talking about Never Enough.
Yeah, I that is correct. It's almost like they just grabbed the I think it's Nothing But a Good Time, the verses by Poison that they kind of just ripped off here, but I'll be honest, I didn't bother to pull up Nothing But a Good Time and do a comparison because I just don't care enough to. Um, but Never Enough is not I I could I mean it's there. If I heard it, it's fine or whatever, but I don't like it, it's just mediocre to me.
Yeah.
Um I think that Stand is also a downside. I don't like the chorus to Stand. It's this kind of, I don't know.
What about the a
It
cappella
does,
part of the middle?
I just, it doesn't do much for me. I
And
gave it a 2. What did you give
I
Stand?
gave it I gave it a 3.
Okay. So it doesn't mean you dislike it. I actually kind of do dislike it. I mean, if I put the album on, I might just let the whole album roll and listen to the whole thing. But, at times I might just skip that at the
Yeah.
same time. So here's, a couple songs that I wouldn't say are great, but I really like them is All for the Glory. I like Eric's vocals, and I think I'm an Animal it's a little unorthodox.
Yeah.
I like it. But of course, those two songs sandwich to me another song which I think is a downer, and that's Danger Us, which I think is, I mean, can you get a dumber lyric than Danger You, Danger Me, Danger Us?
The answer to that question is no, and I can't, in good conscience, give that song anything other than a 0, which is what.
Wow, you gave Danger Us a 0. See, it's funny. You tend to give more 5s. You're more generous in that regard, but you also are a lot harsher than me on some of these things, Um, which is
Dude,
interesting because then that
it
you
kind of
see how that
counterbalance.
balances out in the way you score things on the whole.
I can't even handle the riff. The main riff in that song is just so stupid. I don't like it. I just don't like it. There's nothing about that song. There's no redeeming value to that song for me. So, there's nothing in there I can really sink my teeth into. And like you said, that lyric, Paul's written some dumb. We don't like Kiss because their lyrics open our minds and we explore deep thoughts and revelations. That's not what we're into this
Certainly
for.
not. No.
But my God, that's as good as you could come up with. Um, yeah, that's just bad.
Okay,
That's
so
just
if
really.
you gave Danger Us a 0, and you gave I Finally Found My Way a 0, if those two songs fought, who would win? Which song would win?
Does winning mean which one would be the worst?
Well, which one would be the best, I guess?
I would actually say, okay, I'll vote in favor of You Wanted the Best only because
No,
Peter
no, no. I
sings.
Finally Found My Way. Didn't you
I'm
give that a
sorry.
0?
No, I'm sorry. I found. Well, yeah, I finally found my way. A
Yeah.
0. I'm sorry. Yeah, I would give that a 0 because Peter sings it. I gave that. Excuse me. Let me start over. I gave that a 0. I gave Dangerous a 0. If those two songs battled, um, I'm gonna go with I Finally Found My Way because Peter sings it there.
Okay,
Um,
gotcha. Yeah, which is an interesting thing. We should do an episode down the road on like worst Kiss songs of all time. So keep that
uh,
in your back pocket. So
you can
yeah,
do that. And Dangerous, man, is just it blows. It's look put it. You know, one of the things I do when I'm listening to any piece of music is if I hear like a guitar riff or a melody or something that really hits me, oftentimes I'll say, "Man, I wish I would have thought of that."
mm-hmm.
There's nothing in Dangerous that makes me think, "Man, I wish I would have thought of that." Or
Yeah, right. It's kind of like, ooh, if I had thought of that, I don't think that I would have shared it with anybody.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's like you really want to share that with us, Brian? I'm not really, but
Yeah.
yeah, man, yeah, I don't know what you gave Dangerous, but I gave it a 0. And to your earlier point, Never Enough. I don't like it either. I gave it 2.5 only because I think it's got a phenomenal Paul Stanley vocal. He really sounds
Yeah.
good on this. He
I
really sounds good.
I actually gave Never Enough a 2.5 as well. I think the chorus is perfectly fine. I just don't like the verses, and I agree with you. I think, excuse me, his vocal performance is really good on it. I actually gave Danger Us a 2. Again, I give, you know, that I mean that's it's not great. It's below mediocre, but sometimes there's this weird comedic value I find in in Kiss when they it's almost like when they try too hard and don't quite hit the mark. But yeah.
Well,
Um
Dave, to further kind of explain our weirdness to people, you know, when because we saw this tour, if they would
oh
have
yeah, a
broken
couple times. Yeah.
if they would have broken into Danger Us live, we would have like looked at each other and given each other a high five, right? It would have happened. That's the way we are, people.
Yeah,
It,
partly, and not because we would have like loved hearing it live, but honestly, here's my take on that. It's such a silly song to watch them like play it with like this like macho like intent,
yeah,
you know. It would have been funny, and it would just been like, yeah, haha, okay. So that's another angle of being entertained by Kiss, you know. And I guess that just gets down to the idea. It's like we take this seriously because we love it, but we don't take it that seriously. It's just music. It's just rock and roll, right? That's, you know,
right,
like Ace said, hey, look, it's rock and roll. What's that from?
right. That's from that video where they're with Eric, shortly after Eric joined the band, and they're introducing each
Australia.
other on the radio show, and
Yep. Anyway,
yeah,
that's all I got on Sonic Boom. If you have anything else to say about it, now is a good time.
no, no, I think the only thing I'm going to say that it kind of, you know, we'll speak to this more in the summation, but it's interesting how this album kind of shadowed Psycho Circus for me in some ways. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think my last thing I think I will say about this, I do think that Sonic Boom is far more consistent
mhm,
in the sense that it doesn't feel like a hodgepodge
yes,
that Psycho Circus does. I also think it sounds better. Of these three albums, I think that Sonic Boom is the best sounding record. I think Monster just has a hint of distortion in it that I don't quite get with Sonic Boom. But Monster, which of course at this point is 2012.
mhm,
Um, and for us, basically, like I mean, we did see them, they came through the States, but really our show for the Monster tour was the cruise that year because they played far more songs from this album than they did on the regular tour, which I thought
right,
was really cool for those for fans who, you know, fans love deep cuts, but this fan also wants to hear them play and promote the new stuff. And when they did that show on the Kiss cruise, they played, you know, a real good chunk of this record. So so I thought that was cool. I don't actually think that I don't think, I mean, Hello Hallelujah, I think it's a fine song. I like it just fine. I do think that the first few songs on the record are overshadowed by the last 2/3 of the record. with the exception of Wall of Sound. I think Wall of Sound is a real high point on this record. Super short, but I absolutely love the riff on that song. Just, again, not to be punny about it, but it's just a monster riff. And the other high points for me, there are a lot of high points for this on this album. Wall of Sound, I think Shout Mercy. I love the bass fills that are kind of in the verses of Shout Mercy. I think Long Way Down is probably the swaggerest, kind of groovest song that they've ever did. That, if I was to pick like one of my favorite songs in the entire Kiss catalog, I might say Long Way Down is one of them. I really, really love it. And I love that the cowbell kind of stuff right in the middle in the choruses. Great song, I think. I think The Devil Is Me is a really good song. That's a high point. And I think that the lyric actually is, for once, actually pretty cool. It's like almost like this kind of self-reflective, because by this point, Gene is he's kind of turned a corner, and he's actually gotten married, and he's kind of turned away from his more philandering kind of days. And that's how I interpret that lyric. And I kind of think that's cool. And frankly, I think Out of This World, All for the Love of Rock and Roll, Take Me Down Below, all really, really solid. But my favorite high points, Wall of Sound, Shout Mercy, Long Way Down, Devil Is Me. But that's not to say that the rest of it isn't really solid either. But if I'm picking four real high points, those would be the ones. What about your high points?
My high points, and the high points for me actually changed as I was listening to the record. So I went in thinking one thing, and I kind of came out with some different results. So going in, I thought Long Way Down would be my favorite song on the record. And I thought Shout Mercy would be a really, really high watermark for me. I gave Long Way Down 4 stars. I really, really like that song. Like you said, it's got a swagger.
I gave it 5. But yeah.
It's got a swagger to it. I really, really like the riff, Paul's vocal, the chorus. Really, really good song. Why didn't I give it a 5? That's a good question. I probably could on any given day. I gave 5s to Eat Your Heart Out. The vocals on that, are just off the charts.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
And I love the riff. I think it's just a really, really well crafted, well recorded song. Oftentimes people don't associate really good vocals or melodies or harmonies with Kiss, but I think they show their vocal ability on that track. The other high point for me is Out of This World. I gave that a 5. That song is really, really, really good. Again, okay, it's got an outer space theme to it, whatever. I don't care. I mean, he could have been singing about going to the store and buying a box of cereal, and I'd still give it 5.
To that point, and I gave Out of This World a 4. And here's the thing: if I'm in the right mood, I could have bumped that up too. But I think some of the things, like I agree with you about Eat Your Heart Out. I pulled my rating down a little bit on that. I agree with everything you said about it. The lyric is kind of stupid, which for me, sometimes I pull something down a little bit if the lyric kind of bugs me. But it still works. The thing is, it still works. And the rhythm of the lyric, the melody of the lyric, and the vocal performance is great. I'd say the same type of thing about Out of This World. It's kind of like, hey, you're kind of the space Tom, so you got to have a space kind of song. I mean, you did a lightning one on the last album, you got to do a space one now. That sort of bothers me. That aside, fantastic song, and I really like Tommy's voice. Maybe this is a weird thing to say, but if Tommy Thayer actually put out a solo album, I'd buy it in a heartbeat.
I'd buy it. And it's funny. I was just going to ask you about his vocal performance on Sonic Boom and Monster, on those 2 tracks.
Yeah, I think he sounds great. I really like his voice. I think he's strong. I don't know if he's necessarily strong enough to carry a band entirely, but for a band that at this point had kind of come back to a band that had 4 lead singers, easily, you could easily do that, be one of the 4.
And we heard him do, some Kiss fans take umbrage with this, but we heard him do Shock Me live too.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and like you said, he's a good vocalist. He's a
yeah.
he's a very well-rounded musician, and he really does showcase his vocals on this track and When Lightning Strikes. And he's not trying to sound in any way like Ace. He's just his own person. He's obviously in the guise of the spaceman, but it stops there. He's
Well,
his
and
own.
somebody would probably argue with that and be like, oh, of course he's trying to sound like Ace or whatever. But here's what I would say to that.
I don't know that he is vocal wise.
Well, even vocalize, I could see people saying that because he has a similar range.
Yeah.
But here's my thought on that. You go try to sing like Ace and see how it sounds. Because I couldn't.
I can't do it either.
So either he's really good at trying and somehow achieving that, and that would be a skill unto itself, or he just has a timbre to his voice, which is somewhere in the same kind of sonic kind of range that
I think
Ace
that's
is. And it's like, okay,
and we haven't talked about Brian. We haven't talked about Tommy's lead playing on these two records either. And I think it would be fair to say that his lead playing, live he plays the classic leads the way Ace. He plays the solos true to the way they were written and originally recorded. I
Mhm.
give him that. He's not like Vinny, who slaughtered most of those solos, and I didn't care
I
for that.
agree. I agree.
But when given his chance to record his own solos on these records, I think he does a really, really, really good job. So
Well, and he is a melodic lead player in the school of Ace Frehley. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, I mean, if people want to say he's a copy of Ace, that's fine. People can say that. Or I guess in the literary world, you'd say it's like a pastiche.
yeah.
And it's like, okay, but is it still entertaining? Do I still like it? And to me, yeah, I do. So bravo, Tommy, the Space Tom. So yeah.
Um,
Um,
so did you hit your low points? There weren't really many low points for you.
no, the lowest point for me on this is Freak.
Me too. And what did you give Freak?
I gave it 2.5. Um,
Eh,
I I don't I don't I don't really dislike the song as a whole. It's that middle part that I pledge allegiance
oh my God, that's
to the
dumb.
state of independence. It's like that's cringy to me. The rest of the song is okay.
Dude, the choruses are pretty bad. He's got streaks in his hair. I mean, really? I mean, I give it one
Yeah.
and a half. I probably could have gone lower. It's not a good song.
I honestly I gave it 2.5, and I probably was being a little generous. I could probably have given it a 2, but yeah, it's it's it's
It,
okay.
it it's the low point of the album for me too.
Yeah.
For me, nothing else rated below nothing. Everything else is 3 or higher for me. So
Uh,
all the sound, I got 3.5. Shout Mercy, 3.5. Take Me Down Below, 3.5. Last Chance, 3.5. Um,
Almost everything for me on this record is in the 4 to four and a
mm,
half range,
wow.
except for Freak. And I gave Hell Hallelujah, like I said, 3.5. I think it's a solid song. I like it. Um, Back to the Stone Age is
Yeah,
I gave that a 3. I don't think it's a great song,
I agree.
but there is an interesting element to Back to the Stone Age. I don't know if you thought about this. What does Back to the Stone Age, All Hell's Breaking Loose, and Love Theme from Kiss have in common?
All the guys in the band wrote it together. They wrote, I
Right,
mean, the time the guys wrote the song. It has writing credits from everybody in the band.
right. They're the only 3 times that there's a song written by all 4 members of the band.
Back to the Stone Age has a bit of a chaoticness to it. Like during the choruses that I kind of like. It's got a bit of it's like a bit frantic
Yeah.
with the vocal, and I also gave it a 3.
Mm.
Um, Solid, not spectacular.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the album, it's not disjointed either. We talked about how there's really a lack of cohesion on Psycho Circus. I think this album, the flow, the ebbs and flows of this album, pretty good. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Now we've talked about this before. I'm not one to say I'd prefer an album if a song wasn't on it,
right,
because I like to have everything that a band has ever done.
right.
However, if I'm being objective, like if I was, you know, in some sort of a producer role, at least in terms of sequencing the album and stuff. I do think that pulling Freak out of the track list might have, because to me, the first part of the album, it's like, oh, it starts off good, gets great with Wall of Sound. Then to me, it takes a dip with Freak and starts to climb a little bit with Back to the Stone Age, but then Shout Mercy, from that point forward, it just takes off. So to me, the first part of the album is a little bit of a rumble getting off the ground, and then it just really, really slams. So
I got a question for you. So
yeah,
you talked briefly about the advanced single Hell or Hallelujah. I
yeah.
can take it's okay. If you were going to say, guys, this is the song that ought to be the lead single for this record, and you didn't, and it wasn't going to be Hell or Hallelujah, which song would you have picked to be the lead single on this record?
Um, a lead single.
Yeah,
Um,
like the first advanced.
probably a long way down.
That was going to be my choice as well. Even though I gave Eat Your Heart Out and Out of This World better rankings, I think Long Way Down is far superior to Hell or Hallelujah. That would have been my choice as well.
Yeah.
Down, Long Way Down to me has a bit of a Zeppelin feel to it. I don't know if that, but not that makes it good or bad. It's just kind of like, you are a product of who you listen to and who influences you. And we all know that Paul is a big Led Zeppelin fan, and that injects itself into the music that you write. It tends to do that. And when I hear that song, I kind of get a bit of a Zeppelin feel to it.
Can I also make a comment about All for the Love of Rock and Roll?
Please.
That is in a certain, I don't remember, I didn't put this in my notes, but there is a backstory on that. It's basically, it's in some ways, it's a bit of a rewrite of an older song. And I don't remember exactly the whole story on that. To my ear, when I did pull up this old song that it's kind of derived from,
Mhm.
it really sounded like I mean, you could hear maybe seeds of what this is, but I didn't take it as like a ripoff necessarily or anything. But that aside, it's the other Eric Singer song that he sings on it, and I think Eric knocks it out of the park for the vocal performance on All for the Love of Rock and Roll. And there's something about the song that just vibes with me. The kind of the attitude of the song and the feel of the song. I'm not necessarily one to go with an old-timey rock and roll kind of feel, but
Mhm.
weirdly enough, and we'll talk later about the solo albums, but it's
Yeah,
like All for the Love of Rock and Roll almost sounds like if you had put some horns in it, it's almost like it could have been on Pete's solo album,
totally. Yeah.
but like in a good way. I know a lot of people out there don't like Pete's solo album, and we can talk more about that another point. But I really like All for the Love of Rock and Roll. I really like this record. I'm kind of giving away probably where this ranks amongst the three of these, but yeah, I did some number crunching on this. This is the most collaborative Kiss album from a writing perspective.
Hmm.
The most. Okay. Um, Again, there's no outside writers on that one. And depending on how, you define like what makes up a Kiss record, but 2/3 of the album are co-writes amongst the guys in the band. Okay. Um, 5 of the 12 have three or four involved in it in a given song. Tommy co-writes 7. Tommy Thayer co-wrote 7 of the 12 songs and 1 on his own, which is more than Ace ever contributed to a Kiss record.
Oh, by far.
So, again, I understand why people, oh, it's the Space Tom and he's just a copycat, all this and that and blah, blah, blah. But I think Monster's a great record. He's a huge part of it. I got to give him credit where credit's due. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And again, and also Gene's bass playing on this record and the bass sound, I think is possibly the best sounding bass work sonically, argue maybe since Creatures.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a girth to it, a bit of a rumble to it. It really hits you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gives this album a bit of heaviness, some heft to it. I agree with that. It's a very
Yeah.
good. Like you said, it might be a little bit distorted, and the overall sound of the record might be a little bit distorted, a tad bit abrasive, not as warm as Sonic Boom, not as earthy as
Right.
that, but still a really good sound
Yeah.
overall.
All right. You want to move to the a countdown, 3, 2,
You
1 on this on these three albums here?
know it.
Okay. So as we said at the beginning here, we and anybody who's been paying attention to this, if you're in this long, thank you. Maybe we've said some things that you think is completely crazy. Give us your thoughts, but as you can tell, we add up, up to 5 points each song, then we divide by the total. If you divide by the total number of songs, that's where we get like what I would consider like a star rating, like out of, because it'll give you an average out of 5. And then if you divide by the total points possible, which is, depending on the album, there's what, 12 songs on Monster, so be out of 60 points possible, then you'd get a percentile or a percentage rating. So we do both. And for me, and I am ready to do my third here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Coming in at number 3 for me is Psycho Circus.
It's Sonic Boom.
Wow, I am actually surprised. I thought that it would have been Psycho Circus for both of them.
And therein lies the first surprise that I came across when I did this.
Interesting. And you gave a 0 to songs on both records. Now sometimes a 0 on a song on an album is gonna do that. But since you did a 0 on there's a 0 on both of those records, it's like, well, that kind of evens it out, you'd think.
You
I'm
think?
surprised. I'm surprised. Okay. Okay. I gave Psycho Circus basically 3 stars. I round my stars. And it came in at a 60%. So, solid record, but not the best album in their catalog.
Yeah, for me, if I round my stars on Sonic Boom, it's a 3-star album, 66.36% for me. So that's
Oh,
where that.
interesting. Interesting. So you actually rated Sonic Boom, which was your third, a little higher than I ranked my third, which was
Right.
Circus. Okay. In my number two spot is Sonic Boom.
Mine is Psycho Circus.
Uh-huh. And for me, this came in at 67%. So it was actually only a percent higher than what you gave it, really.
This, for me, 67%, right on the nose.
Wow. And
And
that's
less
so
than
you
1% difference between this and Sonic Boom. So they were very, very close.
interesting. So that for you, Sonic Boom and Circus were very, very close, but for me, it was actually a 7% jump.
Yeah, for you. Yeah, there's like a cavern for you. For me,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yep.
yeah.
And in
Yeah.
the number 1 spot of these latter day Kiss records, obviously then Monster. And for me, this was an 11-point jump, 78%, 3.5 stars.
Okay, so for me, it's 3.5 stars, 69.17%. What I'm going to say about this is, and this is an example of another surprise. I thought I liked this record more than I actually do, which sounds stupid maybe to people.
Well, maybe relative to the other albums.
Yeah, when I went and listened to it though, the numbers that I was giving out just didn't measure up to what I thought going in. So I can't
Okay.
like it as much. Apparently, I don't. It's not that I don't dislike it. I do like it a lot. But yeah, and especially when you compare it to these two, it's only this is another weird comment I'm going to make. This finished 2 points higher than these for me, but I feel like I like this a lot more, even though I just said I don't like it as much as I thought I would.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because it's a matter of degrees. Well, it's like, in the episode we did that included the first kind of set of transition albums, Dynasty, Unmasked, Music from the Elder, and Creatures. I've always said Music from the Elder. I mean, even back when we were kids, it's like, I love this record. It takes me on a journey.
Yeah.
And but when I was actually giving it scores, excuse me, it didn't score up as high as I thought it would, as I was kind of just trying to be objective about how I felt about those songs. So I get where you're coming from. It's like, yeah, I really like this record, but I thought I liked it a little bit more than I maybe actually really do. So hence the interesting aspect to our system, which is not for everybody, but
No. So
um,
when if given your druthers, if given your left to your own devices,
mhm.
between your records, you're probably going to dust off Monster a lot more than either of these. Would that be a fair
Oh yeah,
statement?
and I have, yeah, for sure, for sure. You,
Yeah. Like when I listen to, and I'm normally like you, I'm an album guy. I don't skip songs. But yeah, I don't listen to Psycho Circus or Sonic Boom in its entirety. When I put Monster on, I listen to usually the whole album, including
hmm
Freak. One other thing, real quick, Brian, if we
hmm
might. We have, the version of Sonic Boom has the re-records. Do you want to talk about the re-records at all? Just as kind of an
Um,
aside, just briefly, what do you think about some of these re-records?
let's just do it briefly, and I think because I was actually, you know, coming up with an idea for an episode
Maybe you just
about that kind of thing, because it's not the only
no.
example of that. Bloister Cult has an album like that. There's others. So but just briefly, because I don't want to step on too much into that territory, just briefly, overall, um I like the songs. I'm not going to give too much away. I think actually there's a couple re-records that I think rival the originals. I
Me
think
too.
there's some that don't.
Me
And
too.
um but if it's okay with you, I'm just going to leave it at that, and then
Yeah,
we can go deeper on that on another time.
yeah, because like you said, there are other bands that we've loved for years that have done the
Mhm.
same thing. It was interesting because again, it's not like they did 3 or 4 songs. There's like what, a dozen or so on here that they redid 15.
Yeah,
Okay, so they
yeah,
redid a lot of songs. So yeah, that's another episode we should do sometime for sure. That'd
sure.
be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, there you have it. Again, if you're a Kiss fan, if you follow this era of Kiss and you think that we're out of our minds and you have different opinions or whatever, be cool to see what other people think. Like, subscribe, etc. Just, real quick, we know a lot of YouTubers out there who have huge followings. They do these things where you can support the channel by, donating or whatever. We're not out here for that, nothing against it, but Brent and I and our friend Josh and our friends Blake and Andy and other guys who've been involved with Larry and Andrew, other people. We are part of this kind of creative group called Underlords of the Overworld, and we create something called the Underlords Universe. It's kind of a mix of music and stories and kind of just crazy stuff. And if you're interested in checking out our stuff, we do have these funky things called CDs. I'm still working on being able to access these things
Mm.
on Bandcamp, but everything's on streaming services. We started off as an instrumental band, and then Josh started writing a backstory, and we started to write some other goofy things. And the backstories are published. You can get them through Amazon, and Josh writes under the name H. Prescott Lemon, and there's a whole series on a backstory of like a fictional universe version of these idiots and their efforts to become famous that lead them nowhere except absolute obscurity. And he did a spin-off series about a group of kind of occult investigator types that are subcontracted by the US government for various zany purposes. And these stories have a huge element of, gosh, what do we say? Um, there's absurdity to it. There's just they're fun. There's a level of absurdity. The music itself, we actually take pretty seriously. We have a single we did with Blaze Bailey, formerly of Iron Maiden. It's called Ordo Obstrusus Oculus. You can find that on Bandcamp. We did a couple of songs. We had Derek Sherinian do a couple of songs with us. So if anybody wants to check out that stuff and support us that way, that'd be great. And support the local artists and the local authors, local musicians in your own neighborhoods, in your own communities. So yeah, that's all I got. Brent, any last things, comments on your end?
No, like you said earlier, we'll do we talk about doing a Kiss solo albums, the 1978 solo albums. We should do an episode on those, and
Yeah,
we summation episode
yeah,
and somehow we'll figure out a way to work in the live albums because you know Kiss is really obviously known for Alive and Alive 2 and to a lesser degree Alive 3, but they've got a lot of other live albums we could consider talking about too. So maybe we can get that in the mix
Yeah,
as well.
sure. And the next one, well, I don't know if it'd be the next one. We'll talk about this, whether or not we want to do the solo albums as like an aside, and then do an aggregate. But one way or the other, we're going to be doing an aggregate episode where we take the entire Kiss catalog and show where our overall rankings from the debut all the way up through Monster, where they all fall. So, yeah. Until then. Thanks for checking us out. And again, comment, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. We'd really appreciate it. And take care.